Everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm excited to be sitting down with Alan Hahn, who is the founder and CEO of the Iron Academy. Alan, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you, and thank you for the work you do with your program. I love the kingdom work you're doing, and the people you have on are doing the things that God would have us do, and I love it.
Oh, thank you. So, I mean, listen, you're doing a lot as well. I want to read because, like I said, I read your book the other day. I just finished it actually yesterday, and I want to read this mission statement, which I think this book should be mailed out to every Christian, every so-called Catholic school, every religious school or biblically based school. This is the Iron Academy's mission statement, and it reads. The Iron Academy exists to glorify God by training young men to be unwavering in faith, adept in leadership, and growing in his wisdom, equipping them to fight for biblical values, strengthen their families, and serve as leaders in their churches and communities. When I read this, I said, this needs to be sent out to every church, every school, every religious academy. Alan, thank you so much for spending so much time putting this book together. It's more of a manual than a book.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. We wanted this to be available for people, not just to know what we're doing, but we wanted to put thoughtful questions in there so that they could consider how intentional are they being about their education or what could they do for their young men. I do believe that one of the great failings we have as a country is we are not preparing young men to be men.
Oh, I love that. And you actually mentioned that when you start to define masculinity. But what I found to be interesting immediately, right? Like a young man, right? I had this fascination with swords, and you mentioned that in the book immediately. And I mean, I actually have some behind me, my son, and he's only 9, and there's this fascination with them and the way you break down the sword. But then you go into who I wasn't familiar with, David Della Gardelli. And you mentioned too how his first sword, it wasn't perfect, but can you tell me about your personal journey in your life and how David's first sword and you sort of intertwined?
Well, that's a great question. So, the illustration in the book is about his first sword, and we actually had this vision that we would have our students forge their own swords when they graduate. What I didn't understand is forging your own sword is like having your master's degree in blacksmithing. So we had to drop that. But David's first sword, it was a little bit misshapen. It was still a very difficult thing for him to produce. He had to know a lot to do it, but it was misshapen. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't well balanced. It was dull. It had the fuller, it had the handle, the cross guard, everything in it, and you immediately recognize it that it's a sword. And when you show that to a young man, that young man wants to hold up, a sword, even though it's not what it could be. And I would say that sword represents the biblical manhood that I represent. You know, when people talk to me, they say, "Oh, he's doing the things that God wants him to do. Oh, that's biblical manhood." But I look like that first sword when God's design for us is so intricate. He didn't mess up on any one of us. But it turns out we didn't exactly turn out perfectly, did we?
No.
Whether it be our own sin nature, whether it be imperfect parenting, which every parent who's ever parent will know about that because you feel guilty every day for messing something up. Imperfect teaching, friends, our culture is not allowing us to be what God designed us to be. In fact, we're attaching ourselves to the world instead of attaching ourselves to Christ. Uh, but that sword represents the best that David could do at the time because he didn't have all that he needed to do it. But as he honed his craft, as he developed it, as he became more purposeful and talented in what he got and the talent God gave him to be a master craftsman, the new sword, the Iron Academy sword, or the sword that David is producing today, are beautiful and masterful uses of the ore, the raw metal that he uses for that. And so, what we want our young men to be is not what Alan Hahn looks like. We want them to be the fully crafted thing that David, as a master craftsman, can do. So, on the back of that, our Iron Academy sword to this day, it says, because biblical manhood is never an accident.
I love that. I love that. So, what was the inspiration behind the Iron Academy?
Another great question. So, I'm 29. My son's about a year old, and or maybe a year and a half. He starts saying the things I'm saying and doing the things I'm doing, and that's calls for alarm. I'm a new Christian, and I see him becoming John Wayne because my dad was John Wayne, because I was John Wayne, and as a model of manhood, John Wayne's not a bad one. It's just not biblical manhood. I didn't even have that vocabulary back then, but I knew that I wanted something different for my son. And so I began a journey of discovering, all right, how do I become the parent that I need to be for my son? Very soon thereafter, I started teaching in Christian schools and noticed very quickly that we were graduating boys. And frankly, every high school in America is graduating boys. Every college is graduating boys, though it's up to the young man at that point to be a man. That's not really the college's fault. Unfortunately, most women are marrying boys, hoping they'll become men. My poor wife had to do exactly that. And that should never be the case. So really, that was the first impetus to start Iron Academy is let's when we graduate these guys, they should know who they are in Christ, what it means to be a godly man, what God says about good versus evil, and really prepare them for the battles that are surely coming. The second thing was the classrooms in America are really set up for young ladies in general. And your young ladies are generally doing well. Over 60% of them are valedictorians. Over 60% of our doctoral students in colleges are women. So they're doing pretty well. And this isn't about women, it's about how do we better equip young men. So we've got the biblical manhood on one hand, and we have the male optimized education on the other hand. So that's really why we started Iron Academy.
Interesting. So now, if someone was to enroll, are they starting off at what grade?
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade. Okay, perfect. Because I know, and it's interesting. My son is 9. He's going to the fourth grade in a couple of days, and we still have this wonderful bond. And I found it interesting, which I didn't really know about the eighth grade. And you call it, I guess, the monster year.
Yes.
How a lot sort of takes place. But one thing, I worked with a lot of schools. And, one thing I always, even college, I see it now. I go to a Catholic college and I see a lot of times they have to sway left, they have to sway right. They start off, and you give the great example of Harvard. They had these religious morals and integrity. And then because of whatever change of guard, because they need grants, because they need financing, the board members change, that their biblical principles sort of become washed away and they're a shell of what they once were. How do you ensure that at the Iron Academy?
How do we ensure that we don't wander?
Exactly. How do you stay focused on biblical principles and not sway left and right?
That's a great question. So, one of the things that we do, I think one of the most valuable things we have as a school is our parent culture. And one of the things we work to do every year is refine that to make sure that we're bringing in the right families first and foremost. And then, number two, the right young men. So, we have an extensive application process there. We probably rejected maybe 75% of our applicants this year, but it's not always because of the young man. It's because, well, I'll tell you this, we're after the radically intentional Christian family. And radical sounds like a bad word to many people, but it means rooted. And we wanted them rooted in Scripture. We don't often call ourselves a Christian school because that's lost some of its real meaning. We try to be a very biblical school. This year, we hired two of our first year graduates from 2020, and they were both elected school leaders. I love that they're here because they bring that intensity that first graduating class had. We want to keep that culture. So one of the things that we struggle with, Craig, is the American church, let's say, is fat and happy. And look at us, look how well we're doing. And we lose that intensity to pursue our faith. So we started something called our fight culture here. We call it internally. We have a fight club for our dads. And it sounds like the film, but that is not it. It comes from 1877. And J.C. Ryle, he was a pastor in England. He was disgusted with the passivity of the men in his church, and he wrote this book called Holiness. And for any of your readers who need a spiritual flogging, this book will do it. It's one we should read, all of us, but it's hard to read twice. But he's got this quote in it, and he says, as Christians, we must know that we are men of war. If we would pursue true holiness, we must fight. So we want that culture that we're fighting for our holiness. We're fighting to pursue God's righteousness that he has for us. So I want that culture to be here at Iron Academy because our school culture, I love our school culture, but I don't want us to get fat and happy. I don't want us to say, oh, look how good we are. Oh, we're better at this than they are. We're better at that. That's not the standard. We may not have the visible enemy anymore, but the real enemy is there, and that passivity leads us directly to sin, and we want to fight for that.
Oh, you're right. I mean, when you met it, you said exactly. I mean, because they're Christian schools, Catholic schools, and then there's biblically based schools, because you see a lot of them do waver in order to whether it's to receive grants or for various reasons. But I mean, I see that firsthand. I love the fact also too within the book because I think what's really important too is not just okay, you have the students enrollment, but it's the teachers, it's the professors, everyone that's on the staff that they truly need to believe in what they're saying and proclaiming. It can't just be somebody that's just repeating and regurgitating. They have to truly believe and walk in that same journey. And you say that within the book, and your reference to fighting, I did right away. I got nervous. I said Fight Club, and then as the more I read on, and mean you have the example of Paul, especially, right? We fight the good fight, but this day, I mean, especially now in society, we see there are, I mean, kids, I mean, children in general. They're, for one, they don't identify with religion or faith in general, right? They consider themselves to be none, no affiliation. You know, they don't really know what it means to be a man anymore. The role models are, I mean, whoever's popular on social
Right.
media, they're lost in society. And I always try to figure out what is this underlying reason? Like, when did it all start? You know, what could we work on? And then throughout your book, I look at the honor code or the fight club. You have all these various ways. Do you think anything within the book, whether it's the honor code, if it's the mission statement, if we would apply that in society, that we could, in essence, change and reduce, you know, fatherlessness, recidivism, you know, identity issues? Like, do you think what's in your book that we could apply to really make a difference in society?
So throughout history, successful cultures have always had rites of passage where they take a boy and they say, this is what it means to be a man in our culture. We're going to separate you. We're going to give you a significant test. And if you pass that test, we're going to give you a celebration when you come back, and we're going to welcome you as a man into our society. It could be that we are the most successful culture ever where our boys don't know what it means to be a man. So for everybody I talk to, and we encourage this with all of our Iron Academy fathers. We do have rites of passage here at Iron Academy that we do, but we want the fathers or the significant men in the lives of men without fathers in the home. There must be a declaration of manhood ceremony. That's so important for each one of our young men, whether you do it at 12, whether you do it at 13, whether you do it at 15. We have to communicate exactly what it means to be a man, and this is what we're going to create, that group identity. This is what it means to be a man in our culture or in our family. And everybody can do this. It takes a lot of time, but we have to put a lot of intentionality and thought into it. And we have to start early, because if we don't teach our boys what it means to be a man, somebody else will. They will look for it elsewhere. They'll look for it. You know who's good at this? Gangs are good at this. Uh, Probably college fraternities are probably good at this. Marine Corps is probably good at this. You know, there are places you can get this, but is this the biblical manhood? If we're trying to create a biblical, instill a biblical worldview in our kids, we have to teach them what biblical manhood is, not let the rest of the world teach them what manhood is.
Oh, I love that. So what's changed? I mean, what do you, I mean, can you identify it like as one thing? You call it the, you know, the sexual revolution. Like, what's changed in society to say at this point, this is when for one, masculinity has changed, right? The definition of what it means to be a man, like society has completely changed. Like the church is like, what took place in society that's caused this sort of this crumble?
I immediately think of bread and circus, and this goes back to ancient Rome. Rome is the republic. They have a strong citizenry. Their citizens are actively involved in the decisions of the state. They're going out and they're conquering. They're the greatest engineers in the world. They're doing amazing things. There's this transition from the republic to the empire, and one of the things that brought the empire about was they started to feeding the citizenry with grain from outside of Rome. They started entertaining them in the Circus Maximus and the gladiator games. Feed me, entertain me, keep me happy. Then I don't have to worry about the hard things that come with citizenship. Well, our citizenship is in heaven, and it's never meant. Our God has never given us easy. You ask the people of Israel right now, has it ever been easy for you? It's not easy. The rest of the world is against them. But as his people now, the best thing the devil can do is give us easy, so that we choose the life of entertainment and gluttony, I guess, is part of it. But bread and circus, and that's what's happened to the United States.
That is a great answer. That is really powerful. I'm glad because it's like I said, I always try to figure out what is the one thing because obviously we could always go back and like you said into history and figure out exactly we're at this sort of position and state in our faith and in our country. You know, as I'm reading the book, because I know God communicates to me through books, especially books like this, like the Iron Academy. And there's a part in there, I think it was, let me just get the exact quote. It was oh, sorry, it's Hebrews 12:6, right? About disciplining our loved ones. And I was having sort of the difficulty with my son that day. And I'm reflecting on that passage, how powerful. And then I go to church on Sunday, this past Sunday, and that was the gospel. That was the passage. How important is us for us as fathers, right, to discipline our children?
So you need four things for spiritual formation. And we are learning so much about the Bible. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it seemed like science was refuting the Bible. And that could have been my stance. I wasn't yet a believer. But in the 2000s, the teens, everything that's coming out is verifying the Bible. It's almost like in Revelation where we had this lamb with 10 horns. We all wonder, okay, what is that? What's that going to be? But someday God will say, provide that, and we'll say, oh, that's exactly what that is. Science is doing that for us about how the brain works, how spiritual formation happens. We need four things for spiritual formation to happen. We need to have joy, we need to have community, we need to have accountability, and we need to have group identity. Uh, and, and what you can do in your family, the attachment comes from the joy you express and the care you take for your children. You build that community through the things you're doing. And the accountability, we need to make sure that the accountability is not just about works, but about I, this is this is how we commune together. We love one another. You have to be able to express that joy when you do it. But the fourth thing is the group identity, which is so important because they're going to get their identity from somewhere. And if we look at the book of John, for instance, and we have Nicodemus who's talking with Jesus, and he says, "What do you mean born again? Do I need to go back into my mother's womb?" And this is the teacher of teacher, the old man of Israel. And Jesus is saying, I think we have that testimony from Nicodemus because we know that our attachment does come from our family. That forms so much of who we are. But Jesus is saying, no, your attachment has to be from me. You have to be attached from me. And then later in John, he talks about, I'm the light of the world. I'm the bread of life. You must consume my flesh. You must drink my blood. And that's a hard teaching, right? We have to identify and attach ourselves and abide in Jesus Christ. And if we can do that, that's where spiritual formation takes place. But if we don't provide that group identity very early on for our children, our family, then they're going to get it somewhere. And that attachment will come from elsewhere other than Jesus Christ.
I love that. And you're right. And even before, when you said about the sort of the example of John Wayne, right? I always think about, I think you mentioned, do not exasperate our children, how we're called to be the priest, the pastor of our house, right? So the way I respond, the way I react, the way I carry myself is a reflection. It should be a mirror and reflection of Christ, because that is what my son is going to see. And he's going to think that that is the right way to carry himself. And if I call myself a Christian, a follower of Christ, then everything should be in line. And like you said, within your academy, right? In the Iron Academy, you do certain things like the Crucible Camp or the Solo Night. When I was reading that, I said, we have a nice piece of property. I don't even think I can stay in my backyard overnight. And I'm reading this going, this is probably something that I should do because it removes everything from me and it makes me vulnerable. And we know how powerful that state of vulnerability is. So tell me a little bit about some of the, whether it's prior to, school starting or during the school year, some of the, these events like the Crucible Camp or Solo Night.
So some of these things we're glad that we don't have video of or published. Our world is too soft to really appreciate what we do, but we do these things in love. But our forging camp is for our ninth graders, and we take them away for 5 days of survival school up in the Jefferson National Forest. There's no cell reception, there's no power, and it's a time for us during the day. They get world-class training on how to survive in the wilderness. And at night, we're around the campfire and we're really talking about what it means to thrive as godly young men. Because when you're a ninth grader, your permanent record starts. Whether that's fair or not, that's when your permanent record starts. And solo night is scary. We take them out and we'll say, all right, you get 50 paces, choose your place, make your shelter, and then we'll go on till they can't see or hear the next guy. 20 paces that way, make your shelter. Spending the night in the woods by yourself is scary because the animals can see you and smell you, and you can hear them. You know they're there, but our senses, it's scary. I've since I've started Iron Academy, I've probably spent the night out in the woods, part of foraging camp, 55 times, and guess what? Every time it's scary. And these guys are making a shelter on the ground. Bugs are all over them.
Oh,
We've
I
got
can't
snake
do
stories, we've got spider stories, but they all live. We've got coyote stories. We've got all kinds of things. But it's a significant test, and obviously we want them to trust in the Lord, but to know that they can do significant things. What we want from our graduates and all of our sons and daughters is we want them to be able to overcome things. We want them to demonstrate grit and persistence and diligence. And we obviously want them to have a biblical worldview and follow the Lord to the best of their ability. We want our graduates to have real stories. We want them to be able to do things without digital devices. We want them to have relationships that aren't thumb-based relationships, we like to call them here. We want them to be able to look people right in the eye and have significant stories of overcoming things and interesting things to tell. So we're doing more and more. And as we foresee AI taking a bigger role in education, whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. What are we going to do to combat that? And we've got some things in the other, this year we'll be doing some high adventure trips that we're adding in, and we'll do significantly more things. For instance, our ninth graders will hike a small part of the Appalachian Trail. Our 11th graders, they're going to go on a 200-mile canoe trip from Jordan Lake all the way down to Wilmington. So they'll have to make some significant decisions along the way, where they're going to camp, how far they're going to make it for the day, who's going to be cooking what. The senior trip, they plan every aspect of that out. Last year we went to London for 3 days, Paris for 3 days, Munich for 4 days, and Florence for 4 days. They had everything planned out. I'm just there. I'm hanging out with them. And I tell them, I said, look, if you mess something up, it's okay. Just figure it out. We have time. We don't have to be anywhere. You got it. But we arrive in Heathrow. They tell me where to go get on the tube. We get off in London. They said, all right, we have to buy this card. They show us how to do that. They take us to the Airbnb, everything.
I
And
love that.
I love that we have this term adulting. I don't love that word, but they're doing significant things, and we allow them those kind of things here. This is not the least bit a military academy, because in a military academy, generally you control movements and everything so you can't get in trouble. We're just the opposite. We allow all kinds of opportunities to mess up. We have a mantra here. If a student can do it, have them do it, because we want them to get these experiences.
And you
We
and
don't
you
even have a janitorial crew.
yeah,
They
you have
clean
a
the entire school.
yeah, you have a great example, which I'm not going to say on air, but I love that. I really do. When I was reading about that part, especially about the senior trip, my son, he's 9, right? And same thing. I give him so much responsibility. We've traveled a lot. He's traveled to a lot of countries with me and my wife, and we always involve him in not every decision, but enough decisions to where he's experienced a lot at that age. I mean, we were stuck on a plane for 9 hours. We've lost our luggage. We've traveled to all random countries, small planes, and he's experienced a lot at this age. And I notice now too his patience and how much he can endure at this age. He doesn't get overwhelmed at all. I mean, being stuck on a plane for 9 hours, it was about 100 and something degrees, like people were passing out, and he remained calm. And when we
Good for
traveled,
him.
yeah, and I noticed that too. I try to put him in certain situations, like we go rock climbing and things where I really try to push his limits to. So when he's, I mean, he wrote 2 books already. I mean, he's 9. So when he's 20 or when he's in college, similar to the students in your school, they've overcome so much adversity that when something comes along, they're able to handle it. I don't know if I can handle sleeping out in the woods. That's something that I have sensory issues, but I would love to try it. But really, I mean, what I've read in this book, I would love to send this to my son's school because I think they need to reevaluate their curriculum, but it's impressive. And you've mentioned so many things within this book about the power of joy. And then one thing too that parents probably don't realize are what are some of the effects of popular culture? Because I mean, we know as men, but some of the parents out there, or even the kids that are watching this, what are the negative impact or the effects of following popular culture?
All right, that's so this is true for young ladies and for young men. Uh, Different dangers, both equally dangerous, whether it be YouTube or social media or just having their phone available all the times, having their significant relationships, thumb-based relationships, rather than their allegiance to mom and dad. It used to be that their primary audience for young people was their parents up until they're 15, 16 years old, and then there's a gradual shift to their friend community. Now, that allegiance has gone down to their parents to about 11 years old, and it's getting lower as kids get immersed in a digital culture. So what we have to do is protect them from things. So for young ladies, the pressures of social media and acceptances and likes and to live that perfect life is a terrible pressure upon them, and it shapes them in those formative years. For young men, the digital immersion, whether it be video games or just the constant shorts that they're watching, shapes them. And the things that they find funny, the things that they share, the experience that they're robbed of. There's no telling how much opportunity we've lost with digital entertainment rather than growth, real growth, whether it be physical or intellectual. So as parents, we must be willing to say, all right, I'm going to surround my kid with friends and a culture of friends and families that aren't going to give him a smartphone until he can drive his car or until he's 17 or uh, but to make those really difficult choices, but you have to find a community of people. If you're the only mom out there who's saying, nope, you're not going to have a smartphone or you're not going to be on Discord, well, as soon as that son comes to you and says, Mom, everybody's there, I don't get invited to the birthday parties. I don't get to do this because I'm the only one not on there. Well, that tugs at your heart because you want your son and daughter to flourish. So you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. You have to
Mm.
really look for those people and look for them early if you can.
No, that's a great answer. And like you said, it is hard. It is hard. Thank God, like I said, my son's school, they're very strict and we have very like-minded parents,
Okay.
which I love. And it's funny, we live in a beautiful town with a great school, and people say, why don't you send your son or your daughter, say, to public school? And whenever they say that, I don't even engage in the conversation. I'm like, because there's no reason. We're never going to see eye to eye. There's a reason I send my son to a Catholic school that teaches biblical values. They do need to work on things like all schools, but there's a reason I want that foundation of faith. I want my son to know that God has called him to accomplish something, part of God's plan, and not just look for a job that's going to give him some sort of security or financial advancement or make him feel good about himself. This is way more than that. And you teach these principles and all of the biblical principles in the school, but not everyone can attend, of course, because we live in different states. But is there a way of people getting involved, whether financially or maybe building an Iron Academy in their own community?
Oh, we would love to have Iron Academies in other communities and throughout our area as well. And I see that in the near future. Yeah, we need people to get involved to want this for their communities, and there are first steps. But yeah, in the back of the book, they can get involved with us and contact us. But it's ironacademy.org. But I would love to see this. If the only thing that we accomplish with it is other schools emulate us, I would be pleased with that. Uh, Obviously, I believe we need Iron Academies in every community in the United States, but it is for the radically intentional Christian community. We have grade sizes of 15. Jesus did it with 12. We can't quite afford that, so we said 15. So it's very intentional. Not everybody will be able to do that, but there are certainly things you can emulate, and there we would. It would be such a blessing to build and replicate other Iron Academies to really have a cultural impact. We think biblical manhood. I think we may be heading, and I could be wrong about this, but we may be heading to another third great awakening. As Christians, we have a monopoly on truth. And as the world gets increasingly AI dominated, digitally dominated, people need the truth. There's a hunger for it. You're seeing it in the Catholic churches. You're seeing it in the mainline Protestant churches. Young people are starting to come back because they don't like the fakeness of the world. That's only going to get worse. And as Christians, we were made for just such a time as this. What a wonderful time to be a Christian. We have so much, we have the truth to share with people. We just have to find better ways to do it and to be more consistent about it.
Well, I got the chills because you're right. First of all, we do see that people are coming back, and I think this generation they want love, right? They want unconditional love. They're searching for something, and you're right. Society and popular culture, it continues to change, and they're looking for the truth. But one thing too, when I worked, especially with Catholic schools, I knew that I think it was 98% of the kids that graduate from, say, Catholic school Christian schools would go on to graduate college. How do you gauge success in the Iron Academy?
Our gentlemen go off to college for the most part as well, but what we're seeing throughout the United States is young people, especially guys, They don't want to see themselves in an office. There's going to be a dramatic shift between the young people going into college as freshmen right now and what's available to them when they graduate 4 years from now. AI is going to take a lot of jobs. I don't know how many yet. I've heard as much as 27%, and if that could be catastrophic, I hope it's not that high, but I could see it happening. So our young people have to be really strategic about what they want to do in the future and how much debt they're going to go in to do it. So it used to be that we felt comfortable saying, all right, no, just you go to college, you'll figure it out while you're there. You don't have to have everything planned out. But I would say more and more, it's important for them to begin thinking about what their roadmap is for the future. Is this going to be worth the investment? And if I'm going to pay for this, am I going to pay for a place that's going to try to undo my biblical worldview? And what we have found at Iron Academy is our parents who are willing to pay for their education, they in a biblical education, they are not willing to pay for a place to come down and tear down the biblical worldview. So we're seeing more and more people who are willing to go to, say, a community college for a couple of years, save their money, where in the first 2 years of college is where much of the indoctrination is. And then you can get into your more professional courses after that. So we're seeing some shifts throughout the nation and at Iron Academy, but we're seeing people be more intentional about what's next. When I graduated, I just knew I was going to college. Why? That's because that's what you do in our family, right? That's what the expectation is. And frankly, I could have used a boot camp before a year of the military or something before college. But I'm seeing more intentionality in our young people, and I think that's going to pay off because a lot of change coming.
Oh, I just, like I said, my son's only 9, and I had that exact conversation the other day, because I don't want him to be influenced that he needs to go to college. There are other ways, and I said, and I gave him some examples of people that I know, especially some, relatives that went to college, whether they were indoctrinated or not, but they came out of college with a degree that is no longer available, and they're in debt for 400, $500,000, and especially AI. I mean, there are still, I think colleges should be held accountable because they're offering majors that they know are going to be obsolete in a few years. AI is not going anywhere. I mean, I look at AI because when I first started using it, I used to feel guilty. I said, "Oh, I'm using AI," and then I realized it's just a tool, right? It's the same way if I wanted to make a copy, I would use carbon paper, or I would have to write it out
Right.
twice. It's just something to help us, and I love the fact that you're going to start using AI in your school because it's not going anywhere. It's just a form of technology. It's just something that helps us. But I love your answers. And Alan, I really think, I'm telling you, that schools should pick up this book, even if they just skim through it and read, because in the back you have like that additional, sort of bonus material. If they just take one thing out of this book and they apply that to their curriculum, especially just not to just don't waver. I mean, we're talking about biblical principles, not Christianity, and then they start changing things around. Follow the Bible, follow what's in this book, and I really feel that they will see a change, especially in their school and their community. Alan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. No, no, so tell me again, now, what's the website? How can people find out more about your book and the school?
Go directly to ironacademy.org. Yes.
Well, Alan, thank you so much. I advise people, like I said, to pick up the book, reach out to Alan, and we'll see you again, Alan. Thank you again.
Thank you. Take care, Craig.
Thank you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.